Alright, so the following video will cover the meteor sequence of the second half of Sanctity of the Ward for Phase 2 of DSR. Much like previous videos, I'm going to commentate and pause the POV from time to time to make comments and then highlight very specific cues that I use throughout the meteor sequence for P2 of DSR. I think what's really important is if you're watching this video, you take time to look at the raid plan and understand the different prio systems that you're going to use. The more you ingrain these prio systems, the faster you'll be able to do your calculations when we do the meteor sequence. This sequence is one of the definitions of personal responsibility. You cannot rely on callouts, and I do not recommend you depend on callouts to help you navigate this mechanic because there's a lot of elements at play. And as I mentioned in previous videos, uh, not solely, independent of DSR, but all their ultimates as well have a habit of presenting you with a lot of information on the screen. You need to quickly discern and identify the pieces of information that are pertinent to you, that matter to you, and what you need to do to make sure you do it. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and play this POV. It's taking place at Sanctity of the Ward. As we saw in a previous video, Sanctity of the Ward happens just after wrapping up Strength of the Ward, and Thornton does a tank buster on the main threat. And of course, we're needing to identify the positioning of Paladin and, resolving the lunges from the Dark Knight, as well as averting gaze from Thornton and the eye at the outskirts of the map. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up. So we're doing the Sanctity dash sequence here. And the moment we exit this sequence, we're going to immediately go into the meteor sequence. And one of the first things I do the instant we're done with the dash sequence is I snap my camera to true north. And for good reason. One, because I need to get my bearings. Two, because I need to have a very good idea of where everyone else's positioning is going to be. Because right from the get-go, what you need to train your eyes to do as soon as we're done with Sanctity dashes, you need to get into the habit of looking at the party list. And most importantly, you need to pay attention to the debuffs that are going to pop up. Because depending on the assignments that are about to happen, one or two things will happen. Either supports will be the meteor role, or DPS will be the meteor role. One or the other. So as soon as we're done with dashes, you already have to be looking at the party list to instantly determine what's the situation as far as the meteor sequence goes. That's the very first thing. So as you can see here, my camera is snapped to true north. Because I'm a healer in this POV, I'm on white mage. I am group 1. My positioning is going to be on the west side. Right now, I'm just getting heals out. I'm keeping a very close eye on the party list. I'm just focusing on those buffs and debuffs to make sure I quickly read, okay, like who's it going to be? Is it going to be the DPS? Or is it going to be the supports? So we're all moving into position, and it's DPS. So notice here in the debuffs and the DPS role, 2 DPS were selected for prey markers. This means these people are going to have to bait the meteors that are going to fall, and the DPS in this specific sequence are going to have to bait them in such a way that the meteors are not too close to each other. If the meteors are too close to each other, they will enrage and explode. So that's what's most immediate. what this also means too is at any point in time, if, much like Sanctity dashes and the flex system that we discussed in the previous video, sometimes we will have uh, the roles swapping positions because they need a flex. For example, if our Luna, who's the caster, who's the DPS, had the prey marker, and our Luna is stationed here with me on the east side, as a prey marker, as a meteor bait, our Luna would need to make sure that they move to the south side of the map and position over there because we take the meteor baits on the north and south. As you can see here, K and Cecil have the baits. But entertaining a scenario where, let's just say our Luna had a bait, my static leader, he would have to move his butt over here. But Cecil's already north side range, so Cecil does not have to do any sort of flexing to move accordingly. That's sometimes why you have to pay attention and figure out what's going on most immediate. Okay, so at this time, currently, it is DPS. DPS are the meteor baits. The entire role for DPS are going to have to resolve the outer towers of the meteor sequence. So what does this mean? What this means is, as we're waiting and waiting and waiting, the moment the screen flashes, there are going to be fire puddles at the inner cards. If you're in these puddles, you're as good as dead. You're going to pick up a bleed and you're going to probably die. You want to be positioned. The markers are going to look different in a different POV because our static did a different set of markers. But you want to be positioned such that you will bait puddles, ice puddles, that appear here. And if you sit in these ice puddles for too long, you're also going to pick up a dot and you're going to die. So you have to be careful. Okay, moving on. Now, if you are... I'm going to snap to a different POV. And then I'm going to delete this. So what I want to show is what the east and west POVs look like. Because they highlight very cleanly how to handle the priority system for, who takes the outer towers, who takes the inner towers, how do you negotiate, and all that good stuff. So this is a different POV with a different group. We just exited, Sanctity dashes, snapping my camera to true north. I'm a pure healer in this case. So I'm group 1, I'm taking the west side. In this very example, it's going to be DPS out. As you can see, the prey markers are on the DPS in this instance. So it's going to be DPS out. And one of the DPS, who is range 2 at the south side, is already in position. So they're good to go. The Reaper, who is the melee 2, the Reaper melee 2 positioning is off to the side over here. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to move over here to the north side and sit with the Gunbreaker up on north side because the Gunbreaker is tank 1. And the Machinist has to pay attention. The Machinist has to realize, oh, the DPS is flexing. I'm a DPS. I'm going to have to swap positions with the Gunbreaker. I'm sorry, with the Reaper who has to take that spot. So there's a little bit of flex that has to happen here. So we see, as you can see here, the Reaper's moving into position, and then the Machinist over here is flexing. So the Machinist is right here. The Reaper was here. The Reaper came from here and moved over here, and then the Machinist was smart enough to see, okay, yeah, we gotta flex here to fix this ASAP, to put the prey markers on north and south. Okay, so here's the scenario. it is DPS out because 2 of the DPS have the prey marker, so the DPS rolls have to go out. Now, to resolve the prio systems of taking the outer towers, it's very simple. With your respective quadrant, and this is how I like to imagine this mechanic. The first step of this sequence for meteors is you pretend you're facing out such that you have your own quadrant. So these people at the north side, at the south side from this POV, have their quadrant over here. I highlighted my respective quadrant over here. Opposite to me, on the east side, they have their quadrant over here. Let's see. And I understand it's difficult to see, right? Because there's just a lot of visual noise going on. And on the north side, they have their quadrants. That's the first step. You wanna approach it this way, and I recommend you do so that you can, once you understand, okay, this is my quadrant, then you look at your tower options. We have one tower in my quadrant out, and it's DPS out. So what that means is my DPS buddy, who's a ninja right here, when the ice puddle, everything explodes and the ice puddles are out, the ninja is going to exit and take this outside tower. And that's it. That's all the resolution we need to do for the outside towers. Now let's entertain a scenario where there is a tower over here, and there's the tower right here in the middle. Now, the general prio system is set up such that the roll, and I'm going to word this very carefully, the general prio system is set up such that the roll that is set up to be the out, in which case it's the DPS. The ninja right here and myself are on together in this quadrant. The roll has a priority to take the most cardinal tower. And then the person who is not the roll, me in this situation, because I'm a support, I'm not a DPS, I have to take the next available tower. So this is me, and then this is my role partner, who's the DPS. So that's how you resolve the tower prio system, and then that's how you determine. Now, let's pretend that there's no tower right here, right? Like, just ignore this tower entirely. Now, if we run into a scenario where we know it's DPS out, and there's a tower here that I'm drawing on the screen, and then there's a tower over here. So in the absence of a cardinal tower, the roll that is the meteor roll, once again, the meteor roll in this example is the DPS, takes the most cardinal tower, which would be this tower, but I'm saying this tower does not exist. Absent the most cardinal tower, they take the most immediate clockwise tower, meaning, if you're moving in a clockwise fashion here, the most immediate clockwise tower is this guy right here. This is gonna be the melee's tower for our quadrant, because it's melee 1, healer 1 on the west side. And the non-meteor role person, which is me, I'm a support, has to take the remaining tower. That's how you determine the prio system. It will take practice to kind of get this prio system built in enough so that it becomes automatic for you. That way you're very comfortable with it. if you need practice with it, just remember the role, in which case it's DPS, that has to go out. If they have to take a tower and it's an outside tower for their role, sorry. The first rule is the meteor role takes the most cardinal tower, which is this guy. Easy peasy. And if no such tower exists, and then there's more than one tower option, then they take the next clockwise tower, and then that's their tower. That's how you resolve that. Now, looking at the quadrant again, so what's going to have to happen is as soon as the ice puddles are baited and we're all moving, what's going to need to happen is this ninja is going to have to take this tower outside. And because there's no more towers outside, me as the support, as a healer, you know, whatever, what I'm going to have to do is I have to look at the inner towers, which is this inner zone right here that I'm currently drawing a circle over. So looking at the inner towers, there are 3 towers. How do I figure out which one's my tower? It's very simple. You use the same prio system that you used to help you determine, okay, you know, if there's more than one tower, who takes what tower. It's the same logic system. So for inner tower prio, what you do is if you have to take an inner tower, you will take the most immediate clockwise tower to your positioning. So what that means, just to put it in simple words, you're going to take the tower that's immediately to your left, if it exists. And so this is my tower. If there was a tower over here, that is not my tower. Because this tower right here, assuming, you know, the person over here only has one tower, which they do, that means the Dark Knight would have to go in and take this tower because it's their most immediate left tower. It's the most immediate clockwise tower. This tower is the Dark Knight's tower, if it exists, right? Now, let's entertain a scenario where I'm here in this little circle. Let's pretend this tower doesn't exist. And let's pretend there's a tower right here. And let's pretend both of these guys on this quadrant here to the north side. Let's pretend both of them have to go out because there are 2 towers out here. So the Reaper takes this tower, the Gunbreaker takes, you know, the tower previous. So this zone is like there are 2 people going out because there are towers. And once again, let's pretend this tower does not exist. So my tower options are these 3 towers that I'm drawing in a circle. I will say immediately that the south side has 1 tower option, and remember, it's DPS out. So this red mage right here has to go out, take this tower. That also means then that this Dark Knight has to go in and take one of the inner towers. And I'm taking my sweet time explaining this because I really want to emphasize this. Looking at me in my quadrant and pretending that this tower does not exist to my immediate left, just because there's a tower right next to me right here, does not mean I can take it. I cannot take this tower. That is not my tower. Because it's not the tower most immediate to my left. It's not the tower most clockwise to me. Why? Because if I take this tower, once again, this Dark Knight has to go in. And then this is actually the Dark Knight's tower. Because relative to their POV, this is the most immediate clockwise tower. If the 2 of us go in here, we're gonna we're gonna have some friction. We're gonna have some issues because I took the Dark Knight's tower. So once again, DPS out, Red Mage out, one tower on the outside on the south side. This is the Red Mage tower. This is the Dark Knight's tower. So that's their tower. I cannot go in here. What I have to do is I have to go into the dead center and flex. I have to determine, okay, among these two towers, one of these is my options. And so by the time I hit the center, the second healer who's on the opposite side over here would have made the correct decision and taken their respective clockwise tower, which is the tower to their left, leaving me with this tower right here. This tower will be my tower. So what I need to do, once again, go into the center and immediately go into this tower. So that's how you handle the flex system for the inner tower prio. It will take practice. And we have to be very strict on following this prio system because I can guarantee you in a prog environment, there will be circumstances, as I highlighted a few moments ago, where people are going to fight over towers and they're going to attempt to take towers that are not theirs. I guarantee you that, you'll run into collisions like these where like the Dark Knight is taking their tower correctly. But if I'm not paying attention and I decide, oh, this tower is open, so I'm going to grab it. No, that's not correct. This will get us killed and we're all, it's a guaranteed wipe. So it is absolutely important that you review the raid plan and you understand the inner tower prio system. And I'm making it out to sound more complicated than it is. It really is just, oh, is there a tower to your left? No. Then go in the middle and figure it out. Like you're gonna flex and figure out, okay, that's what it is at the end of the day. But it is important to understand why this prio system exists is to avoid any collision. So up until this point, we've discussed, how to handle the outer tower prio system. We've learned how to handle the inner tower prio system. For the next step, keeping those prio systems in mind, there's one exception to all of this. So you have an understanding what to do if you're taking the outside towers. You have an understanding what to do if you're taking the inside towers. The only wrench in this entire prio system are the towers that are happening on the north and south side of the map. So I'm going to let this VOD play out a little more. So looking at the north and south side, I'm currently on the west side facing in, with the north side to our left over here on alpha, and the south side to my right on my POV on 1. We're gonna bait, let's see, north side has 2 towers, south side has 1 tower. This is a very simple meteor scenario. The scenario is north-south 180. North-south meaning, once again, it's, remember it's DPS is the meteor roll. North-south 180 meaning, this guy is going to take this tower, and the red mage right here is going to take the only tower that's outside for them. And the gunbreaker is going to fuck off and take the tower over here. North side 180 basically says, okay, meteor rolls are going to take the north and south tower. And they're forcing a scenario that will set up the towers such that the meteors will land 180 degrees from each other. And it's a very simple scenario. You just make sure that you force a 180 type deal, and then you hold W and you bait your meteors. Now, that's all well and good. And what does that mean? Is let's look at this POV and see what we got. So at the start of this sequence right here, let's see. We got 1 tower out here. one tower north side to the northeast bias, and on the south, it looks like we got 2 towers out there. So this is really important. Yeah, that's what's going on. So here I'm gonna draw this real quick, and it'll give a lot of clarity as to what's going on. So here's the map, and here are the tower options. On the north side, you have 1 tower. On the south side, oh, I'm sorry. So on the north side, you do have 1 tower. And on the south side, you have 2 towers. So what's going to have to happen is the meteor roll. Draw it orange. The meteor rolls are here, right? Like they position such that they end up at the north and south. And this is the flex system on the meteors that the north and south side have to get accustomed to. Now, the basic rule says okay, you know, the meteor roll has prio on taking a tower out. So, you know, this guy takes this tower, and then the general prio system says, okay, you will take the uh the most cardinal tower, which would have been this tower, but there is no tower here. So absent that, this guy would just take the next available clockwise tower, which is this guy right here. Now, that's all well and good because with the meteor people taking the tower at the northeast and the southwest, it'll force to 180, and it'll make it very easy to and safe to resolve the towers. Like they're just gonna have to hold W as they're taking their, you know, their respective baits for the meteors, and then they'll be in good shape. So this is a very easy scenario. Now, there are instances where you can run into a situation where, and forgive me that I'm pausing because I'm trying to remember the scenario clearly, is you can run into a scenario like this. You'll never have 3 towers, so don't worry about it. This is the scenario that you can run into. North side has 2 tower options. They can take this tower, and they can take this tower. And let's say south side has these 2 tower options. They can take tower on the right or to the left. Now, these kind of things matter because you're not always going to have a beneficial scenario, right? You're not always going to have a circumstance that'll help you resolve this safely. You're going to have to do some flexing and some adjustments. And unfortunately, you know, to the extent that I'm able to describe, sometimes you have a very sometimes you're given a very shitty configuration to work with. So let's work with this scenario right here. So it's DPS out, for example. There's only 1 tower option out here, so this guy's gonna have to take that tower. Now, this guy right here, you know, if we follow the prio system that I was describing at the very start, you know, taking the most cardinal tower, then, you know, if there was a tower right here, then you would take that tower and then go for it. There's a problem. There is no tower here. It's only this tower and that tower. Now, the basics of the prio system that I described earlier says, okay, if there's no tower here, then you would take the next most clockwise tower. So it's a tower to the right on the outside, and then it's like, okay, cool. You technically are following the prio system and you're doing it quote unquote correct, but you just fucked yourself because by taking this tower, you have now put yourself in a position where you have to do what's called the cursed meteor movement because, you know, this person over here is going to bait meteors, and then remember the rule about meteors is if they're too close to each other, they will explode and kill everyone. And by you picking this tower down here, you basically did not give yourself a lot of room to bait your meteors safely, such that you avoid exploding. Because by the time you reach the sixth and the seventh meteor, you're gonna be very tight, and it's not gonna be a good time. We're all gonna die. So it becomes important for the people who are assigned the prey marker, who have the meteor roll, to quickly look at the meteor options that are affecting their respective quadrant, and the opposite quadrant. So if I'm on the south side, I have an easy time. Like I could already see, okay, I could see my tower options down here, and see the tower options on the opposite side. If you're on the north side, you have to get into the habit of quickly glancing south and then looking at your north side options and figuring it out. So in order to avoid this scenario where, like, both of these meteor guys are taking this and the south side's fucking himself over, um the south side would need to take this tower, right? And even though the prio system that I described earlier basically said, yeah, you take this tower. If no tower exists, then you take the next clockwise tower. Technically, that prio system, that's what it says. The meteor people have the flexibility and need to take the flexibility to take a tower that will force as safe a scenario, ideally a 180 scenario if at all possible, to avoid the cursed tower configuration. So that is something that you have to over time train and understand, because the reality is too, unfortunately, sometimes you're dealt a bad hand, and regardless, sometimes the game just fucks you over and says, okay, here are your options. So this is a cursed pattern movement for the south side in this example, because unfortunately these poor bastards have to take the tower options that are going to fuck over the south side for the meteors. So what you're going to have to do is the north side, and this is why it's important for north side and south side to look at their own quadrants and also look at each other's quadrants. The north side has to have the awareness of realizing, oh, my buddy on the south is about to have a really bad time. Their tower option is pretty shitty. So instead of like sitting dead center in the tower here on the north side, what you should be doing is you should be hugging, the edge of that tower as much as possible, and give your buddy here at the south side as much room as physically possible, so that they can be successful baiting their towers. Do not fuck over your buddy by like just sitting in the middle here or sitting over here, because if your buddy's also kind of stupid and they're over here, they're also your buddy at the south side who has to take the cursed tower movement is also fucking themselves over, because they're, instead of being here, the person who has to do curse movement can just be on the opposite side, to buy themselves more space. So it's those little details that will make it or break it, for the tower sequence, and unfortunately, that also makes it or breaks it for statics. You have to have this awareness. You have to understand, you know, where you stand in a particular spot will guarantee success or completely wipe a run, especially because meteors is like 2 minutes and something seconds into the encounter, and you're gonna have to see this every single time. There is no getting around this. So once again, in the event of like a cursed tower sequence, that's what you want to do. If you're the north side and your buddy on the south side has to take a cursed configuration, give them as much room. Hug the edge of the tower, biasing away from them. And the south side, same thing. You gotta use your brain. Do not sit in the middle. Do not sit on the edge closer to the north side. you have to be as far away from the north side to buy yourself as much space as humanly possible to make that as successful for yourself, because you're not going to have a lot of room to safely bait those meteors. In fact, you're going to have to stutter step, you're going to have to zigzag, whatever it takes, but you have to make sure that the meteors, as you're dropping them, aren't too close to the north side that they enrage and they explode and kill everyone. It's not an option. So that's how you handle the north and south side meteor sequence. I said a lot of words. I think it'll be effective to see VODs on your own time. I'm going to let these POV play out just so that we can see what's going on. Now that we have a basic understanding of how to handle the outer towers in our respective quadrant, how to handle the inner towers in our respective quadrant, and then how the north and south side, especially the meteor people, handle their respective quadrants in them making decisions on which towers they're going to take to help them be successful in baiting the meteors. You cannot rely on callouts here. You have to use your eyes, you have to use your brains, you have to glance at the map. There's not a lot going on. You're literally just looking at the map, making sure that you understand what's going on. So in this POV, once again, I am the G1 healer. I'm the region healer. I'm gonna split this party up into quadrants. As you come out of the Sanctity dashes, what you need to be doing is you need to be looking at the party list to see which role is going to be the meteor role. And we can see here that it's DPS. DPS is the meteor role. All right, cool. So DPS out. DPS are going to flex accordingly, whatever that looks like, and then move into your respective positions. So it's at this point almost instantly as I get into position and it's like, okay, it's DPS out, it's not supports, I don't care anymore. What I'm doing in this instant is I'm scanning the outside towers. I see that there is only one tower outside. I'll highlight it right here. There's only one tower in my respective quadrant. So that immediately tells me, okay, there's only one tower. I have to go in. I have to go inside here and handle these inner towers. So I already know that. The next thing I look for, as soon as I realize, okay, there's what the tower options are outside, knowing that I have to go in, then I'm immediately looking for the tower that's like basically adjacent to me to my left. And I can see, okay, yeah, I got a tower here. I'm good to go. If this tower didn't exist, then this is a lot of information to process, especially for somebody that's learning the first time. Do not worry about this. But because I have a lot of practice, the next step in my calculation is I determine what the tower options are in the adjacent quadrant to my clockwise position. Fancy talk for saying I look at the quadrant to my left and see what their tower options are. I see that there are two towers. If this tower didn't exist to my immediate left, then that immediately tells me this is my tower right over here. I don't even have to, and this is my logic, in calculation, because if this quadrant over here has two bodies going out, there's not going to be any body left to take this tower. Therefore, this tower that I highlighted a few moments ago that I'm circling right now is my tower. If this tower right here did not exist to my immediate left. So that's the order of operations of calculating tower sequence. Whether I'm a meteor roll or not, it doesn't matter. But taking it from the top, so I'm looking at the party list, DPS out. I'm looking at the outside tower options. There's one tower, that means I'm in. I'm looking at the quadrant clockwise to me, it's two towers out. All right, cool. I have one tower immediate clockwise. That's my tower. Move in. And we take our towers. So this is actually great. This is a really good POV because I correctly take my tower. The scholars over here, has to take a tower inside as well, and they correctly take their tower. The Dark Knight has no tower here, and they have to take a tower inside. So what does the Dark Knight do? The Dark Knight, this is why I really like this POV, because it illustrates the inner tower prio system in, in real time. This and why does the Dark Knight need to go in? It's because there's only one tower outside, and that belongs to the Red Mage. So what the Dark Knight's gonna do is like, the Dark Knight's already knows, okay, I don't have a tower here. That means I'm gonna have to flex. So the Dark Knight is gonna move in here and then assess. They're going to see me take this tower because this is rightfully my tower. And they're going to see the Scholar rightfully take their tower over here. So that means, okay, then this last remaining tower is the Dark Knight tower. It's the Flex tower. That's what's going on here in this POV. So I'm gonna let this play out. So scanning, moving, keep your eyes on the Dark Knight, keep your eyes on me. So as you can see here, I'm gonna highlight the towers just because there's a lot of trash on the field as we all exploded. Here are the towers, just to highlight it. So I was here, and then I took the most immediate clockwise tower, so that's mine. Great. And then the Scholar was here, and then they took the most immediate clockwise tower. That's great. That's theirs. And so the Dark Knight was moving in here, and they were kind of meandering to try to figure out, okay, I see that the Scholar and the White Mage are taking the towers. Therefore, this tower is mine. And that is correct. And then that's the inner tower prio system with flex in real time. I'm gonna let this play out. Bam. And so the next step in all of this is what's the scenario for the meteors? So it's a very easy configuration. It's just meteors out 180 north south, meaning both meteors have a cardinal option. A cardinal option meaning north and south. So here's the south tower, here's the north tower. And then what's gonna happen is, as soon as the map flashes, the north and south meteor people, as soon as those towers flash, they're going to hold W, and then they're gonna walk along the golden ring, and they're going to end up at the opposite side. So the south side is moving clockwise, and they end up north. The north meteor is going to move clockwise, and they're going to end up south. That's what's going to happen. So here we go. We're in position. Keep your eyes on the meteor rolls. The meteor rolls are here on the north side and here on the south side. Make sure you're tracking them. So we're all taking our towers. Unfortunately, they're going to be in my blind spot just because I'm doing white mage stuff. And keep your eyes on the Reaper right here at the outskirt. As soon as this flashes, as soon as we take damage from the towers resolving, which is called Conviction, this Reaper right here is going to start holding W. Do not sprint. Do not sit there and wait for the first meteor to fall on you and then start moving. If you wait for that meteor to appear on you and you start moving, it's already too late. We're already dead. If you if you move out prematurely, there's a good shot you're going to miss the snapshot for the tower. You're going to miss your tower. We're all going to die. So as soon as you see Conviction, as soon as, the towers flash, the marker on your head disappears. Use the towers flashing to be your signal to start moving. Do not delay, because the snapshots of the baits is actually pretty quick at the start. If you delay, you're gonna die. You're gonna get everyone killed. So here we go. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. That's 4. That's 5. That's 6. That's 7. 7 meteors are baited. And the meteor people are on the north and south. Remember that the Reaper was on the north side here. And remember that the Red Mage was on the south side. And as you can see here, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 meteors, and they ended in position. And then here's another thing too. If you're a meteor person and then you're baiting your meteors, just because you finish baiting your meteors does not mean you stop. You stop wherever you finish. No. If you're a meteor person, you have to take the tower at the north and the south. Why? If the red mage, realized, oh, okay, I'm done baiting meteors, and they baited their 7th one here and they sit here, this is my tower. Their tower is over here at the north side. This is what we call displacement. So sometimes there'll be configurations where you will be displaced as you're baiting your meteors. You have to remember to come back to the north or south tower that you have to soak. You cannot take anyone else's tower. You have to be ready to sprint or plan your movement in advance such that you end up at north and south. There's no negotiation. If you don't, we're gonna die. So that's for the meteor responsibility. Now, if we go back a bit, so I taught you the calculation for determining outside tower prio, inner tower prio, and then the inner tower flex system, and then the meteor override, basically the override in the prio system, so that the meteor people force as safe a scenario for the north and south side when they're baiting the respective meteors. The next thing is just more mechanic. It's just like basic mechanical things that you have to be aware of. So, okay. We take our towers. For the first set of towers, make sure you don't fuck up the prio systems. The meteor people will start moving the instant the towers flash. The towers have flashed, so they start moving. Meteor 1, Meteor 2, Meteor 3, Meteor 4. By the time Meteor 4 and Meteor 5 come up, if you're sitting outside, like this machinist over here, if you're or the Reaper as well too, if you're sitting outside, you're gonna have to pop knockback immunity because Grano starts casting Faith Unmoving around the time that the 4th meteor is baited going into the 5th. If you pop your knockback immunity after the 4th meteor, your knockback immunity will persist to prevent you getting punted into the wall and dying. So that's what has to happen first. And then I'll try to illustrate this here very, very briefly. So the scenario is, let's see. The scenario is if you're the meteor role, your job is gonna be to, the meteors who are running up and down, south to north and north to south, they're gonna end up at the north and south towers. That's what's gonna happen. So that's easy, right? The role that is the meteor role, and pay special attention to how I'm phrasing this. The role that is the meteor role. So if it's DPS out, that means the DPS are going to eventually have to, for the second set of towers, they're going to have to be at the cardinals. If it was supports out, the supports are going to have to be at the cardinals for the second set of meteors. Because, there's going to be towers spawning at the cardinals and inner cardinals as well. The inner cardinal towers are for the non-meteor roles. So remember in the scenario, it was DPS out for the VOD that we're referencing. DPS out, so therefore DPS are taking these outer towers. And supports, sorry, I messed that up. Supports are gonna have to take the inner cardinal towers. So I was here. This is me. I'm healer 1. And then healer 2 is right here. Healer 2. And then tank 2. No, when they came in here, they were here. What's gonna have to happen is your inner cardinal tower is 1 clockwise your position. So because for my light party, I am west, I have to take the northwest tower. That's my tower for the second set of towers. So this is where I belong. For healer 2, they're on the east side. So 1 clockwise, their cardinal position is going to be southeast. So this is their tower right here. The Dark Knight is the south cardinal position down here. So their tower is going to be over here. Now notice when we took the inner towers, this is kind of roughly where our bodies were. What is this tank going to have to do? Can they take this tower? No, they cannot, because this tower belongs to tank 1. Because tank 1 is the north cardinal tower, so they have to take the northeast tower. If tank 2 trolls the shit out of this pole and takes this tower, we're dead. What tank 2 has to do is they have to remember, oh yeah, I'm the south cardinal. So what I have to make sure as the south cardinal, I need to make sure that I position accordingly so that when the knockback kicks in, they're punted to their respective inner cardinal tower. And that's all there is to it. And it's the same logic applies where if it was a scenario with healers, with supports out and DPS in. So let's just say, here we go. Let's just say there had to be a flex between the tanks and the healers so that one of the healers ended up south. It doesn't matter because they got the meteor roll. Melee 1 is with healer 1 on the west side typically. So because they're on the west side, the northwest is melee 1's tower. And then range 1's tower is on the northeast because they're with the tank. And that's their tower. Melee 2 is here because melee 2 position is east, so it's 1 clockwise is southeast, and range 2 is here at the southwest. Because they're here with the tank on tank 2 at the south, 1 clockwise. So that's how you handle the second tower set that we're all getting knocked into. Is like, okay, we take our towers for the first set, and then we start positioning. So keep your eyes on this Dark Knight. Let's see. From the point of us taking our towers. So the Dark Knight is currently positioning at the northeast because that's the tower they have to. So like they have to sit in this first tower to resolve it correctly. So good. And then keep your eyes on the Dark Knight. As I move the camera around. The Dark Knight is currently sitting at northeast. They need to move their butts so that they end up here at the southwest so that when they get punted, they're going to make sure they take their tower. They cannot stay here because guess what? Look where the gunbreaker tank 1 is positioning. They're positioning to take the northeast tower over here. So if this Dark Knight just sits his ass here and doesn't move, if he's at northeast, he's gonna get punted over here, and the poor gunbreaker is gonna be confused. It's like, why are you here, bro? Like you just killed all of us. So it's something that I really want to emphasize because people forget after soaking the first set of towers, they forget to reposition to take their cardinal positioning and their inner cardinal positioning relative to their light party positioning. So once again, this Dark Knight has to make sure they remember to move at the respective inner card to their position. There's tank 2 is south, so it's going to be southwest, one clockwise. Keep your eyes on this Dark Knight. And see, there you go. You see the Dark Knight correctly moving into position to prepare for the knockback. Dark Knight's here. That's wonderful. And then the Gunbreaker is positioned correctly at the northeast. When the knockback kicks in, then the Dark Knight's going to get punted and end up at the southwest. So everything's good. And see, there you go. The Gunbreaker is correctly sitting in their tower up here. And then the Dark Knight's correctly positioned here. I'm correctly positioned to get knocked back to the northwest, and the Scholar's correctly positioned to get knocked back to the southeast. Everything looks good. At this point, for the inner tower people, we're just waiting to get the knockback. We're just sitting around doing nothing while these poor meteor people are baiting their meteors. So we make the call for knockback immunity for those who are outside. For those who are inside, do not pop knockback immunity. You're going to get punted. And bam, there we go. And we successfully completed the Meteor Sequence. From here on out, there isn't anything significant. The hardest part is over a P2. Honestly, a lot of people spend more time than I think is necessary, but it's just also because there's a lot of moving parts to the Meteor phase. When the Knights appear here, as we just saw, this is the signal to do single target mitigation, feint, addle, reprisal, because Thornton is going to cast Ultimate End, heavy raid-wide damage. So we need mitigations, we need a GCD shield, whatever's necessary to survive it. Thornton is going to have a debuff applied to him that's going to make him take more damage, so he just starts swinging wildly. He's going to target a person at random, and he's going to start casting Broadswing. And Broadswing is a very simple 3-to-1 dodge. He's going to do 3 swipes at any random direction. In this case, he's swiping to his left. We're going to dodge into the left. And then we're going to dodge into the right. And then he's going to do... So he does 2 broad swings. Then he does an Enrage cast. And you have to kill him before the Enrage cast goes off in order for you to move on to P3. I'm going to let the transition play for P3 because there's just a little note too. This is where it's really important that everyone understands and studies their mitigations. Because if we miss a tool in P3, there's a very high likelihood that people are going to drop dead. Because as you'll see in a short moment, going into the P3 transition, we have our mitigations out, our party mitts are out. We're preparing for final chorus, and this hurts like a motherfucker. So you do need to study the mitigation schedule to make sure we don't explode and all die on transition. I've been in PS where like a dancer forgets shield samba and we're dead. Like the tanks are like alive and they're healthy, but everyone else just blows up and they're dead. Okay, so forgive me that this is a long video. Again, it's just because there's a lot of prio systems. There's a lot of little details that you have to quickly read and understand for the Meteor Sequence in order to carry it out successfully. But I with practice and with comfort, you'll learn to quickly scan the mechanic and solve it for yourself. To be honest, I'm at a stage where I can solve Meteor Sequence in about 1 to 2 seconds because it's still a lot of information for me to parse. But the calculation that I shared earlier, where I say I'm looking outside, then inside, then a quadrant adjacent to me, to my clockwise, to determine the towers, that happens within a fraction of a second. And then if I'm a meteor, for if I'm a meteor, my calculation's actually much simpler. I just look at south and north, figure out the tower options, I telegraph, and then I move accordingly. That's all there is to it. And then the rest is just movement. So we're in Sanctity Dash right now. We're coming out of Sanctity Dash. Snap the camera to true north. This is the wide POV. You have access to this. And so, bam, here we go. Very nice visual. Meteor options are 2 towers on north side, 1 tower on south side. And then for the meteors, they can just take the cardinal towers because that's the easy pattern. That'll force a 180. And then the gunbreaker who's here, because it's DPS out, the gunbreaker who's on north side is just going to have to take this tower. So very easy configuration. And then I've already discussed the inner tower prio system, and how to resolve that with respect to our quadrants. So we're good to go here. And that's all there is to it. And then we just let the whole sequence play out. So very good vantage point. Please study it. Make sure you study the rate plan. I gave you special scenarios to work with as far as unusual scenarios to work with. And then bam, north, south 180, inner tower, outer tower, people take their respective towers. You see the tank making sure that they're going to get punted to the southwest while the gunbreaker at the northeast is in position. 4th meteor is out, knockback immunity. Remember, just because you bait your last meteor, you have to, as a meteor person, you have to end up north-south. It doesn't matter how far north is or how far south is from you. You have to make sure you end up at north-south. Knockback, soak the towers, and you're good to go. Easy peasy. Now, the last thing that I want to cover concerning Meteor Sequence is the cursed pattern, the very fucked up scenario. So I'm going to pull up a VOD. This is me on tank. So for context, I am tank 2. I am south side. I am assigned meteor. And unfortunately, I got really unlucky. So remember, after we come out of Sanctity Dash, what you should do instantly is snap your camera to true north. So you see that little camera work that I did. Bam. I'm looking at true north. And then the next step is you need to look at the party list. Supports out. How did I determine that? Remember, split the party list into quadrants, and the prey markers are on support, so it supports out. Snap to true north, supports out. We're going into our default positions, and then it just so happens that the tanks, both of them had prey marker, me being one of the tanks. And so it's at this stage where I'm already scanning my options and I see, okay, there's only 1 tower in my quadrant. All right, so I have to take this tower. And then I'm scanning the north side options. And then this is why I say it's important to split the map into quadrants, because it's very easy. It's very easy to look at these 2 towers and think, oh, these are north tower. These are north quadrant towers. That is not, this tower is not north. This tower is the west quadrant. So very important that you understand how the quadrants split. Okay, so I only have 1 tower. I'm here at the south. I only have 1 tower option. All right, cool. That's easy. Also, God hates me because the north side only has 1 tower option. And guess what? You know, this is going to force a fucked up cursed pattern where excuse me. Where, just going to illustrate this, I'm not going to have a lot of movement to work with. These are my tower option. This is the hand I was dealt. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to move and position my body right here, as far away from the north as I possibly can. And the dude over here at the north side has to do me a solid and make sure he doesn't fuck me over and give me as much room as possible to work with, so that when my tower when my tower explodes and I need to start baiting my meteors, I have as much room to work with to try to make it to the north side without my meteor getting too close and exploding and killing us all. So that's the scenario that's playing out right now. And it's a really shitty scenario, but sometimes that's what you have to do. So, taking it from the top, snap to north, scan the towers. Okay, I instantly see that I'm a meteor roll, and I have to resolve meteors. And I already see that I have to do cursed. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So what I do is, you see me glancing back and forth to confirm, and it's like, okay, yeah, I am fucked. Pay close attention to my positioning. Where am I in this tower? Am I here? No. Am I here? No. I'm over here. Why am I over here? Because when I start moving, it's going to buy me as much space as I need, as much space as I possibly can get, so I don't fuck myself over. Because if I start over here at the opposite, I have less space. If I start in the middle, I don't have as much space. But if I start here at this little tip, as far away from north side as possible, then I buy myself a lot more time to work with and hopefully be successful in doing the tower baits. And these are the little finer details that you have to understand and you have to execute, especially when you're dealt the cursed tower configuration. Otherwise, you're as good as fucked. So here we go. I'm waiting for the towers to flash. Bam. And then I start doing the cursed pattern movement. I have enough practice to have a very good understanding of when to stutter step to avoid killing us. And as you can see, I cut it really close to my final meteor right here. I just baited my final meteor right here. That is very close for comfort. It is successfully far enough that it won't blow up. But if I was unfortunate and baited the meteor right here, we're as good as dead. So once again, it's going to take practice. The cursed meteor movement is perhaps the most difficult that you're going to have to deal with. But whatever you can do to be successful, to buy yourself as much room, and then you can see that I'm glancing at my buddy here on the north side. So I'm moving into position, and I'm a little annoyed because as I glance, it's like, hey, asshole, why the fuck are you in the middle of the tower? He's over here in the middle. He's supposed to be over here. So, like, as I glance for that split second, I'm like, well, shit, he's not helping me. I don't have a lot of room because this jerk didn't put himself over here. He's over here in the middle tower. So, that, this is why you have to buy yourself as much room as possible so you don't fuck yourself over. And, you don't deal with a scenario where your meteor buddy fucks you over. So you have to do everything in your power you can to be successful. So once again, take tower position. I'm scanning the north side tower. That's why you see me glancing. And I need a split second to see where he's standing. It's like, oh, fuck you. I'll do my best. You didn't help me as much as I'd hope. Knockback immunity. And we were successful. And then that's all there is to it, to resolving the tower sequence and the meteor sequence. You have to study the mitigations, because if we miss tools here, or if we burn more tools than we need to survive this, we're not going to have those tools available for the P3 transition, and we're going to die to P3. So it's not enough to throw everything at one thing. You have to understand at what points you need to put your tools into effect to avoid dying. Oh yeah, also, once again, broad swing. It's a 3-to-1 dodge. Thornton's going to flip around. Respect the mechanic. It's very silly and stupid for people to not respect the mechanic. And as you can see here, Lara and Calicina just ate a 3-minute 50% damage reduction, damage down, and they're dead. They got punted into the wall. Just respect the mechanic. Just because we have the damage and we're gonna kill early, you still have to do the mechanic. And there you go. There goes the tank. So it's really important that like you do the most basic things that you need to do to ensure that you survive. Because otherwise, see, look at that. People exploded. They didn't have the mitigations up because we had people dead. I cannot stress this enough. You need to study your mitigations. You need to study what tools and when to use them. Because if you fuck it up, we're gonna die. Is the easiest way I can put it. We're in transition to P3. We don't have the proper tools out, and bam, people are exploding. Wonderful. But please make sure you study, make sure you understand what you're doing, and definitely ask questions. And that's it. I'm going to replay one of the POVs at full speed just to narrate the callouts that I would otherwise do in real time. Let's see. So I'll use this POV. So I need to move a little back. I'm gonna start from Sanctity, just to emphasize the camera movement, the camera work. Okay, cool. Heal, heal, heal. Camera to true north. Look at the party list. DPS out. North south 180. DPS out. Remember, it's DPS out. Knockback. Two-minute. Mitigate. When Thornton casts broad swing, get behind him. Move. Get behind him. Left. Get behind him. Cool. Mitigate. Welcome to P3. And then that's all there is to it.